I'm C. Some people over here at Mirabeau call me a front-end developer. I'd rather not say that. I'd like to tell that I'm a front-end designer because I'm more of a design nerd than a front-end nerd. And I'd really like to, sorry guys, I'd really like to talk with visual designers and not with front-end developers. So maybe you can change my mind during the break. Speaking about breaks, I'm going to tell you about this awesome title, Everything Can Break. It's not about the nth time that I broke my iPhone. I've got this weird case for my iPhone, and it's just because I broke this iPhone 6 a couple of times and it's cost me a lot of money. But I'm going to tell you about websites. And first of all, why do things break? I had some problems with telling people about progressive enhancement, mainly clients. And I came up with a solution. And now I just talk about real-life situations I come across in everyday life. So I guess most of you guys didn't take the stairs, but the elevator. If you're walking into the elevator with your mobile phone, well, then you have a problem. Internet connection dies. Same counts for tunnels, for example. I live in a street nearby, and it's a very busy street with Wi-Fi. When I walk into my kitchen, I can't access my own Wi-Fi, so I can't look up recipes while I'm doing stuff in the kitchen. It's really annoying. And another thing, data. Most people have a data bundle with their cell phone, and one of the things I had in my previous connection was when you're at your end of the data bundle, your provider keeps throttling your connection. So it's really annoying. Slow internet is so much more worse than no internet at all. And this thing, free Wi-Fi, I really hate that. Well, some people like to call it Li-Fi. I can explain that. But I think Jake Archibald can do it a lot better. So here's a quote from him. I recently went to Berlin, and I had to use free Wi-Fi as well, and it really sucks. I took my own dongle with me. I got that from Mirabeau, and it worked amazing. But yeah, of course, there are more things why websites break, and one of them is like old and slow devices, browsers. They're mostly combined, so as you can see, the decorations over here and the clock over there, we work for several Chinese clients, and when they use their desktop, it really is a slow one, and it's an old one. Even though they're mobile phones, they are cutting-edge technology. That's really weird to work with, but yeah, that's how it goes. Another thing, I've written about that earlier, enhancement blockers. Most of you guys know them as content blockers or as ad blockers. The thing is that these extensions to your browser, they can interrupt certain things, not only ads, they can break a whole website. And the worst part is that people don't remember they set it on. So, well, we work for a few big clients over here, and it's really a no-go if some users think that the website is broken. It's not good for your user experience of your website. But that's cool and all. Nice nice pictures, but what does really get broken then? These are all sort of normal situations, yeah, well, blah, blah. Let's check some websites. I guess you guys can recognize this one, the Dutch Railways. Well, if you use their Wi-Fi on their own trains, you can plan your own trip. So over here you've got Plan Uw Reis. Let's plan your trip. The form is just not there. Yeah, in this case, well, JavaScript is not working. It's not loaded. This awesome website is built with Angular, and I can't use it in their own trains. That's weird, right? Well, here we've got a bank. You know, banks are built on trust. Yeah, well, I don't trust this bank. There was a really clever content developer. He or she used a web font to encapsulate the logo of ING in the web font. Well, I've worked on ING before. Their logo, well, it's very detailistic, so this is a really nice solution. But if someone is using a content blocker, enhancement blocker, as I would say, then this person maybe can see the logo of this website.
It is a nice logo, this.
Yeah, well, I like it far better than the actual logo. Well, furthermore, over here you can see that this is a search bar. Well, if you read and if you recognize this pattern, but the icon, the looking glass, well, it says a lot about the function. Yeah, so a few other things are broken over here with no web fonts. Yeah, well, these are two bad examples, as you might say. Well, there are a few websites who break in a good way as well. So over here we've got the Dutch Public Broadcasting Company, NOS. It just works. There are no images loaded on this page, but I can still use it. I can still access the content, and well, I'm okay with this. I'm missing the logo, but that's all right. Yeah, this just works. Another news website with nothing loaded at all, except for HTML. This is a website of The Guardian, I guess. Yeah, I can still use it. And the awesome thing about the HTML of this website is that things are indented over here. So you can see a main article about the Panama Papers. There are a few sub-items as well with it, and they talk about the same subject, or the detailistic view of things. The only thing is that they repeat themselves. I don't know why, maybe because of the missing images. Well, let's just back it up. What's going on over here? I think there's no separation of concerns over here. Maybe you know this term or not. It's part of progressive enhancement. With progressive enhancement, you separate the content from the styling and the interaction, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. With my first example of the NS, yeah, well, it just breaks because of using Angular. And yeah, well, the second one, ING, well, it's dependent on the style for a bit. And also the icons in web fonts. I think we shouldn't do that. A lot of people have written and talked about it as well, so I won't go any further in this. It's really an anti-pattern, and we should stop with doing it. Well, we should stop with doing some things, but we can also do things right. I'm going to tell you a bit about my opinion about progressive enhancement. I think that content should always be available for everyone. this is, yeah, well, an open door, right? But we don't think that way. Well, maybe we think, but we don't act that way. And another thing I'd like to say is that we don't need to serve everything to each browser. We should stop doing that. And, well, that's a weird thing to say, maybe, but I'll explain it later in this slide. Here, I'm going to tell you about a few things we do at Mirbo. We use the mustard cut. Most of you guys know it. Checking with JavaScript if a certain function is available in the browser, and according with that, loading certain JavaScript or not. So like IE8, well, it doesn't support local storage. Well, then we don't serve all of our awesome JavaScript to that browser. Furthermore, this certain browser doesn't get any web fonts. Why, you might say? It's progressive enhancement. Well, the thing is that certain browsers like IE8, well, they can't use the awesomeness of web fonts. They don't support ligatures. They don't support any other open type features, but most of all, they get slow with web fonts. Another thing is that we want to have the same experience for each user, and I think that usability is far better than branding. And we work at Mirbo with components. So we separate the code from a header with the logo and a search bar, whatever. We make certain parts of a website, and we serve the JavaScript with that, with asynchronous JavaScript. We use two libraries for that, require.js and conditioner.js. Conditioner.js, well, it's really awesome to use. This library, written by Rick Schenning over there, he made this library where we can load in several JavaScript files according to some conditions, like media queries, for example, or other things a browser might do or not. And it really helps us with doing progressive enhancement the right way. I'll talk to you about that later. I'm going to show you some things we do at Mirbo, two examples. First of all, a bad example of progressive enhancement. Yes, you can do that. Something doing the wrong way. Over here, I've got a toggle or accordion, as you might say, and this just works. This is a non-JavaScript version. It's just showing, hiding some content, and we do that with CSS. So over here, with some basic JavaScript, we add this class has.js to the HTML tag. And when that's done, well, we don't display any text. So you get this. And JavaScript gets loaded, and then you can open it up again. Simple, right? But what if this component JavaScript doesn't load at all? We do asynchronous JavaScript. So we have a certain amount of separate JavaScript files. You might say, well, why don't you combine it all in one file? Well, I think that some login functionality shouldn't belong to the homepage, or web form JavaScript. Well, we can do this in the head tags, and furthermore, we just separate a lot of things. But yeah, there's this problem. If JavaScript doesn't get loaded, well, you just have this. It doesn't work. Well, the awesomeness of conditioner.js is that when a component is loaded, and it's is executed, then we got this awesome attribute in our HTML, in our DOM. And that is this thing, data initialized. And it shows the component name. With this CSS, we can alter the styling of a web page when JavaScript is really executed. And this is really awesome. With this way, we can make websites better and not block anything to users, even though you're using progressive enhancement. This is progressive enhancement the right way. And here we've got a better example of progressive enhancement. A few months ago, well, maybe it was a year ago, I worked with several colleagues, amongst them was Paul. It was this project called Park and Shop. It's a Chinese, well, based in Hong Kong, supermarket, and we made this awesome minimal viable product of this website. It was really awesome, a nice experience to work on this website. And with this project, we explained progressive enhancement to our designers. Well, we had the best designers over there, but I'm going to tell you about this simple component and menu. Over here we've got a homepage from our working library. This is like an IE8 view. This is built content first and mobile first. Over here you can see a hamburger. This hamburger links to a separate page. And with this we can use everything of the website with IE8 and other web browsers that can't load JavaScript or aren't really CSS3 compliant. So over here you've got this separate page. You can navigate through every product category or some other things. You can log out, as you can see already. But it's more awesome if we can use CSS3 with this. So over here, we use the checkbox hack. With this separate checkbox, which is kind of hidden on the website, we can open this menu. And that's really awesome because you don't need to navigate through to another web page. And over here we can use the same hack for this search component. Let's say if your browser does support SVG as well, then you get these awesome icons as well, and a retina logo. Well, on this beamer you can't really see it, but it's a bit better than on the previous slide. Let's say we got JavaScript as well. We got this loaded, and there we have this amazing, well, it's a minimal viable product. So over here we've got this basic menu where you can find your way easily through all the alcohol beverages. This is for me a minimal viable product that I can find my beer. Yeah, this is a really simple solution, and we couldn't have done it this way without working together the right way. Well, I needed an image for this, so I thought of two colleagues. This is really a stock photo, but they're actually looking at this website I just showed you, and this is actually a designer. Well, he isn't here today, but Bram is, and he's a front-end developer. You can recognize our front-end developers with the all of our same kind of shirts. In the weekends we do boot shopping, so. But yeah, this is really a stock photo, but this is how it works at our company. We try to work together, and if we work with HTML and content first, then we can make amazing websites, even though this was a minimal viable product, but we're going to make this thing better. So, that said, I'd like to repeat myself, because I think that repeating is always good. Repeating is always good. So yeah, over here, well, I already said it. Content should be available for everyone, and we don't need to serve everything to each browser. Make sure you check the website of Conditioner.js. And yeah, well, does anybody have some questions? Yeah.
I have kind of an open question. Have you looked into service workers in browsers to give users an opportunity to see content while they're offline?
Well, I've looked into that. At another HTML5 meetup, I saw a very good example of a political party website. I've looked into it, but for this these type of clients, well, we don't really need it, and it's really awesome to work with that. And I think that's a great layer as well for your progressive enhanced website. So yeah, that's really awesome.
You can see that happening in the future.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we should use it when it's available for most browsers. Yep.
I have a question about the data initialized part.
Mm-hmm.
What we always struggle with is that then you have the initial non-enhanced view, so that basically everything is expanded, and then JavaScript is loaded, kicks in, and then everything on your site left. I don't find that an enhancement of the user experience.
Well, you might say that. That's a really good point. Well, I struggle to find a good example that's presentable as well. So over here I made an oversimplified example of this. And you can really enhance this with certain CSS in JavaScript. But yeah, it was too big to show that in this presentation. But you can do it. Yeah.
You were saying that you load JavaScript files according to certain types of conditions.
Yeah.
Is that only with HTTP 1 or HTTP 2, or is that a problem? Do you think you're loading too many files?
It's not really a problem with HTTP 1. I think you can use asynchronous JavaScript for every type of connection, but HTTP 2 makes everything a hassle.
But when you're on a mobile phone, every time you request a file, it takes at least a few milliseconds. So
yeah. Well, that's the thing about Conditioner.js. We mainly make JavaScript for tablet and desktop viewports. So on mobile, we try to make everything as light as possible. And that's where Conditioner.js comes in handy, because we want to use interaction on larger screens and not on mobile.
So you create different bundles for different viewports?
Yeah, you can do that. Yep.
Do you have any data on what users, what the capabilities of the browser are like? Can they load SVG or JavaScript?
Well, I've looked that up on Can I Use? Well, I think it was too much for this presentation, because most of you guys probably know canIuse.com. But yeah, about the SVG part, we try to make everything accessible in the right way. So for these icons I showed you, well, it isn't necessary to load them on all browsers. There's a certain browser that can use SVG, and that's from Firefox 3.6, and that's why we make this difference, because I guess that browser can use media queries and advanced CSS3 selectors, but doesn't understand SVG. correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a sort of a thing that one type of browser can do these amazing things, but it can do something else that's necessary. So I oversimplified this. We built layer upon layer upon layer, and well, we tested good, and well, it is really done the good way. But the thing is that statistics, well, it's not for this presentation, but I can show you several things. Yep.
Have you ever used emojis as a backup for icons?
Well, I used certain UTF-8 characters, and they looked well, quite good in the font I used on my desktop. Then I used my iPhone, and there was this fucking emoji. Well,
kind of backfired.
Yeah, it kind of backfired, yeah. So I really hate the iOS solution. I think that Safari needs to do this as well, because I mainly test on Safari, and then I use my iPhone to test things and other devices. But that's really an anti-pattern, I guess, using UTF-8 characters.
Right.
Yep.
How do you test the wide range of conditional situations?
Well, with Conditioner.js, you can implement this media query where you can add several conditions. So that's how we use it. But for a more in-depth answer about that, I refer you to Rick's. Yeah, I really do use an enhancement blocker myself. I use it on my Safari browser, on my iPhone, whereas I don't use any enhancement blocker on my Chrome browser. So I really care about my internet connection speed. So I tend to use Safari to make my connection also faster. So yeah, I really hate bad websites. I guess we can check for some beers if they're still cool.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yep.